and whatever I see is smiling at me. Love is who I am. So hello there, beloved Ascension pioneers, and welcome to 2018. Yeah, that's the year, that's the word. So I am kind of apologizing because this month's video and update is coming a little bit late. But I was actually down with the so-called Ascension flu for the last few days after New Year because I went to the city, which happens probably once a year for me. I went to this New Year's concert on the 1st, and classical music concert, which I really wanted to go to. And I kind of stayed with a friend. So I was actually shown an interesting unfolding because for a while now I was receiving messages about how we're being upgraded through things like viruses. As you know, viruses are actually the most basic, kind of like organisms, if we can call them as such. And we know from the evolution of our planet how life was, continuously evolving to greater and greater forms of life. And viruses, as you know, they're kind of like translators. I remember back in high school when we studied in biology, the main definition of how viruses actually work in their work of transmission. So they work at the principle of lock and key, if you remember that. So basically, I've heard from my friend as well, who's a doctor, that new gene treatments are implemented and created so that there can be, a gene carried through the viruses and then implemented into the structure, of our humanness. So viruses actually, I was shown, they are not always understood and perceived properly because the majority of the humans are so afraid. And this goes along with the topic and the message of this year. This will be yearly kind of like, emphasis of what's truly important for us this year to master, to evolve through, to contemplate together as a group collective. And remember, my messages are always for the group. Sometimes people want to engage with me in a personal communication, and I don't really do that because everything I share is already part of the group messaging system. It's all for one. It's all for all of us together. So I like to keep my focus there because it takes a lot of work and contemplation to receive all these messages and to get them out. So I was shown that this kind of goes in hand with this understanding because the main topic will be 2018 life force intelligence, but also versus the artificial intelligence. Because as if you've noticed, probably if you're a conscious observer yourself, there has been a tremendous increase of information and leaking out, of that information about artificial intelligence and how do we move through it as humans and human beings who are evolving and ascending on a planet that's ascending through the solar cord that's ascending as the whole solar system. So I was shown that why there's such a almost like mania, to propagate these, as you know, a lot of the vaccination manipulation or agenda, and why is this so? And it's almost like forgetting our nature of how we, even our bodies, sometimes need to reconstruct because they're constantly being destabilized within a certain form they're holding at a certain vibratory level. And I'm all about the embodiment. My messages are all about how do we embody ourselves? How do we embody our life force? And so what I was actually shown is that, there's this such importance held at what viruses are all about. So I actually felt deeply called and encouraged in a way to present this natural understanding of our evolutionary phase, not just as evolving souls here on the planet, but understanding that we're evolving our bodies as well. We're adjusting to the new frequencies, and this was always my main messages, the topic of my main messaging here system for all of you. The thing is that there is, what has been developed on our planet was this immense propaganda to not trust the evolution of life itself, not trust life itself. And as you know, many fears started to become a result of that, coming out as a result. So I was actually asking myself, why is there such a strong agenda to create this vaccination system and to kind of make humans fear, organisms like bacteria, viruses, because they also play their roles. And we ourselves sometimes have to get these reboots, because if you've had one of those ascension flus yourself, you've probably noticed that afterwards you felt rejuvenated, you felt completely revitalized, and this is what happened for me. And last year I actually revisited a pattern from last year was the same. I actually, here where I live, it's quite pure, the environment, although there is no environment on our planet right now that would hold maximum purity of life, because Gaia has been so polluted and it's so intoxicated in a way. So I was shown that for those of us who live in this pure environments and we take in as much, pure food as possible and water and all of that, sometimes we kind of have to go to that has happened for me actually, to these environments that hold more of this, that holds something that can trigger you, can come in your system to trigger you. And I felt, okay, am I going to concert, or actually I'm going to pick up viruses, as my dates? It was quite funny. And actually I had those 3 days of bed rest, and afterwards I felt really, really beautiful. So I was also shown a metaphor for our evolving planet, because a lot of you might be asking yourself, well, how do we get out of this? Because those of you who have been working on your grounded embodiment here and your planetary service, sometimes, and we all come to this question, is how will we get out of all this? Because we're not hovering somewhere above the planet, we're actually seeing and witnessing and acknowledging all the problems and issues that are actually present in our world, this day and age. So I was shown that's almost like the same when you have a disease or when you have a short temporary illness. And, before it gets better, it gets a little worse. And that's how it was for me as well. I was all shaky and weird. And the next day I was like, wow, I'm up. We can't force these things. So I'm telling you all these things because it kind of goes into the topic of the overall synthesis of this year. So I'm going to create a short recap for you guys, those of you who have not been present perhaps at the end of 2018, which was actually on the New Year's Eve. That was the day I hosted an event. It actually came out 3 hours. It was 3 full hours, but it was a lot of just hanging out. And so there was my New Year's party on Facebook Live, and I'm going to try to do more Facebook Live videos, hopefully monthlies, to kind of get the group involved. And I don't know yet. I haven't been yet shown everything. This is why this month I'm really being shown the hermit stage for myself. I keep getting this message because we always try, kind of as humans, we try to rush into the year. We're always so ecstatic about, wow, what will the year bring? What's it about? And also a lot of people are hoping for more prophecies and, as you know, readings or predictions for the year that lies ahead. But this is not what the beginning of the year is about. It is about, our hermitage and how we enter this realm within, so we can get messages ourselves, what it will be for us specifically, and then how may we re-enter this in a new vibrational way, the ongoing events, how we are serving and assisting life through our own, reality and what we live as human beings. So during that event, you can always rewatch. All the videos are always shared eternally, infinitely on Facebook, as long as Facebook's there. So there's a part where we did some spirit messages. We did some oracle readings and people participated. It was quite fun. I like to get people engaged, and I want to do more of that soon. And so you can still watch that. It's available. But in this video, and in comparison to the last video before this one, where I created more of a synthesis, like at large, what's happening with the whole goddess awakening, I wanted to show how important it's getting for us to truly become embodied. Because with all the turbulence, with all that's happening now, because the darkness factor is increasing in our world, because we're moving through the chord of this, what's called the fourth dimensional density, that brings everything to the surface and facing not just our own personal karma, but the collective karma as well. And during those times, it will get pretty intense. And if you're not in your body, you will notice it, because you will feel fatigue, you will feel restless, you will feel even depressed at times. And being in the body just feels so good because you know you're here on Earth. You're in a grounded sense aware of that fact. You're aware of your mission, even if it's just holding presence in your body and your form, because whatever you put out there, it moves back into the collective, and it's kind of like recycling itself until it's purified to that null effect, if you know what I mean, comes back into 0 point. So this year specifically will get so amplified because it is an 11 gateway year, you know, adding up to 2, which I've talked about in the Facebook Live video as well, and in the previous Goddess Embodiment video, that this is the time, the vibration of becoming the vessel and becoming the highest expression for spirit and life force. So instead of expecting prophecies, predictions, and even readings, it's best that we feel already in the beginning of the year what this vessel energy feels like, and to allow ourselves to just rest as well, because a lot of us we've been through a lot. We've gone through a lot of energetic, constant resurgence and emergence, and we're like rising phoenixes, like every week, perhaps every month, at least. So I want to say that, again, I want to emphasize that this video will be about what's at large playing out and what's important for those of you on the path of self-mastery and life force mastery, who know that your mission here is to become fully embodied rather than a disembodied, hoping, wishing for something to happen, and you're seeing Ascension as an event. We're seeing that as an evolutionary, it's almost like an evolutionary movement that we're a part of because we're co-creating it. Our presence is so important. So it is so vital that we are here in the body. And I remember when the new year began for me personally was with that new moon in the galactic center. I think it was in December 18th, 19th, something like that. I said to myself, ooh, I really want to teach people how to move in the body. And I heard Spirit saying, but you already do. And I'm like, yeah, but more physically. And I want to do that more, as you know, with retreats and really being in nature. Because if you've noticed yourself, when you're in nature, just allowing yourself to be in that spontaneous flow, and you're kind of channeling the greatest creativity expression of yours, I call it like my moments when my inner child is maximum joy. And this is when you are really bringing heaven on earth the most, because instead of just pumping that information and knowledge, you're actually bringing your essence to the planet. You're being with the planet. It's almost like you're hanging out with Gaia. Literally, that's how I feel. And at those moments, I can feel like being so moved. I'm being moved to tears. And I have these spontaneous, crying moments, but that's crying of bliss. It's just so ecstatic. It's beautiful. And this is when we really get to feel our essence. And we have to have these moments because we also connect to the grid. And I mean by that, the old grid. We're constantly interchanging in between. I'm going to talk about this in this video. And the two systems, two templates that are now present, for quite a while now. But it's important that we're constantly bringing that higher to that density that has been distorted and it's been manipulated. And it's like this constant play of light and shadow, and it's becoming important to be in the center, and we can only achieve that through constant embodiment. So I've been kind of away from that as well in December. It's been quite a challenging month, and I'm hearing not just for me, but when January began, I felt this upsurge of energy, although I got, a little temporarily sickness for a few days. But I felt this when it was over, again, like you're receiving a new body, like you're being upgraded to a new way of being, and you're already in this hyper creative state, and you want to just feel and live your freedom to the maximum and express yourself. So this is the highest evolution of how we're meant to live our lives. So again, I want to recap that the first and the second, and the year began with illumination. It was a full moon in Cancer, and it also showed us that the feminine principle is meant to lead through this year, and especially because Saturn is going to be in Capricorn in its home position, which is the maturity, the wisdom of this, the maturity of the feminine wisdom, in a way, the principle that will guide us through in the next 2.5 years, something like that. So to be the vessel, to experience the priestess energy, will come to the forefront of many beings. And we're also going to have an eclipse at the end of this month, so watch that out. It's going to be, I think, in Leo, in 11 degrees, which again is a gateway number or energy. And it's going to it's going to just bring this, what for you, your specific topic, and where your energy is most meant to shift you, and of course your reality. So check out the house where it happens for you, where you have 11 degrees of Leo. If you don't know how to read your chart in a galactic way, to read your star map, I have a course called Galactic Signature. So anyway, I want to say that um, what's happening is that those of you who've gone through this inner mastery of inner polarity integration through life force mastery, you're going to notice that your energy is going to come more to the forefront to work with a more collective based energy, which means you've mastered yourself. You're going to now move into mastering the responses, the energetic responses, and how your life force mastery can serve the whole and the planet. And that's why I think my Life Force Mastery course was so popular. Well, I created it that way because I wanted people to go back in the body, because so many people were constantly just asking questions and what to do and what's their purpose, instead of just living their purpose and getting all the information as they're doing it. Because it's like self-downloading, it's self-sustenance, it's constant self-reinvention and re-innovation. So if you haven't done that, there's still people who are needing to do that first within. As you know, we're catching the waves each as we go along. But if you have gone through this and you have learned to truly master and take back that power through your life force mastery, you're going to be called to kind of more engage with energies that are more collective energies. And for me, I've always functioned that way. So sometimes when people come and ask me personal things, I'm like, don't pay attention to me, because my life for me is not about that personal life where I have these personal things. It's a life of service. For many of you who are specifically volunteer souls and you're called to action at this time, this is not so much of a personal incarnation. This is more of a gift of life to Gaia. And we know why we're here. That's why we're so driven, devoted, and dedicated. So, um, this year of amplification, so it's kind of like a speeding up, it's happening because of the 11 energy, because so much is now ready to come to the forefront. And life force manifestation, for those who have worked on life force mastery internally, will now practice, will come into practice the mastery of external responses and life force manifestation. So it will be more seeing how it works when the inner world is governed, how it moves into the world of manifestation and matter. So this is where spiritually comes at the forefront of physical reality, because that was always our mission, is to lift up and help to raise the planetary frequency so that it can move with the cord of solar ascension. So those of you who haven't yet taken the Life Force Mastery course, I strongly recommend it, because if you haven't done that till now, these few years from 2018 to 2020 or 2022 will be rather intense. So those people who will want to move along with the stream but will actually still just kind of look up without doing the descending spiral work will not thrive, because they haven't yet gotten what it's truly about. This is not just about the upsurgence of information. This is about informing ourselves through life force translation through our bodies. So whenever I get in my body, when I truly move into a body, there's such immense bliss, and we have a direct kind of like shortcut to what truly brings heaven on earth. But majority of people are not using it because we're constantly distracted. We're constantly bombarded with external information, even in the spiritual communities and new age networks, because now it's so popular to know everything and follow everyone and what everyone's doing. And my messages have always been about what you can do for yourself through your own mastery, instead of just being everywhere, doing everything, go to every workshop, or follow everyone, thinking everyone has the best messages, and that everyone's messages perhaps are important for you, because not necessarily. Everyone has to find a gateway through their own heart resonance, because something will be more of their path than perhaps something of someone else. It's like in dharmic yoga, in the Eastern traditions, at very young age, they already kind of specify through which yogic path they would lead the initiate, because they're showing through their natal chart and their kind of like how they respond to life. They're showing the tendencies, and this is kind of like how they guide them. Yeah, so for me, how I'm always shown my path is I'm the synthesizing force, because that's what the white ray is. It's even the way I kind of like channel information, always what comes from me first. But I love to also I'm being guided to people or individuals who are bringing forth also ascending materials, and it's always the pure things I'm drawn to, and I try to share these things with you as well because I see unity. I don't see us as in divisions, and I'm not trying to propagate anyone, or I'm not even doing that for myself, but I share things that really resonate with this path and kind of like contribute to it. So in that way I always see myself, because when I read something or I find something, when I pursue that information simultaneously, it's kind of like my nervous system, my synapses go, oh, and I get these aha moments, and I get information, or I get this overall wisdom about the whole thing that's synthesized. I'm shown the deeper meaning of things, and that's how I function. So when you discover how you function, and you literally can only do that not with the mind, but when you get in the body, because your body, the wiser it becomes through life force mastery, the more it recognizes through the internal discernment system the things that are beneficial for its ascension and things that are not. That doesn't mean that which is not beneficial for your body is bad or it's wrong. It's just not even everything of the light always serves us. It has to serve us in our uniqueness, the way our uniqueness is built into our DNA template. Okay, so our templating the way it is. So this amplification is moving us into, some people perceiving it as a splitting reality, and some people perceiving it more as a unifying reality. And again, it depends where you find yourself to be. And because this is, in a way, I'm shown this is a pillar year, and that's what the 11 is. We're feeling this strong tendency to feel things through intense discernment. So either it's this, either it's that. It's kind of like a strong, energetic theme of choice. So those of you who've really already chosen or have learned this art of choice through mastery are perhaps not going to have so much to deal with that. But people who are still following into those footsteps that some of us have already paved, they're going to feel a strong energy of constantly, needing to choose something. It's kind of like we have to learn to choose, and it's always up in our faces, and whenever we don't want to and we kind of put it on the shelf, it keeps coming back. So that's kind of like that recycling of energy. But when we master this no time reality, and you know that in the zone where we are now, we kind of have to release our grip on time, because we're moving through this fourth density where time does not exist the way we've perceived it in the third dimensional linear perceived reality. So the more we do that and we release these tendencies, the more we will have experiences that will naturally bring up that which is of highest resonance and choice for us. So things right now are being more shown the way they are. You're going to see more. That's white, that's black. The gray zone is kind of being is being pulled out of the murky waters, if you know what I mean, because for many years that's been hidden, and since 2012, so much that perhaps for those who are in the pioneering stages, when maybe the new age metaphysics started to come out in the 70s or maybe the 80s, many materials coming in the 90s as well. Now it's kind of the synthesis is being created, because that which was before just talked about, and people went, oh, is now happening, and many people who were these conscious channels are now bringing forth this information that kind of revisits that what was prophesied then, and it's now truly unfolding, because it's not so much in the gray zone anymore. It's really coming to the forefront of what's seen, and that's why our reality seems worse now, but it's not truly worse. It's just the appearance. Remember the metaphor with, gets a lot worse before it gets better, because we have to meet all aspects of us, where the polarity on this planet and us as a part of this collective consciousness grid has not been integrated, where there has been a discrepancy, or in a way this feeling of separation, and saying that's good, that's bad, because it has to play out until it's finally resolved and coming back to that null spot, which I said in the beginning. I found a great video, and I always recommend you things that I really like and I think are very super cool, from the Omnium Universe. You can find the YouTube channel. I think the channel is called Corey. What's her name? No. I forgot for a while. There's so many channels, I forgot the names sometimes. Just find Caroline Corey. I don't know, Caroline something else. Sorry guys. It's Omnium Universe. Just typed it in, and she made an overview about 2018, which was all about the 2 grid systems, the templating. I felt that was really true and very cool. And she also made a yearly meditation to really step out of that, releasing that old through the vortices points and moving out brand new and revitalizing through the whole nervous system. I wish I could do meditation at the beginning of the year, but it wasn't time. Things just didn't add up for me. So perhaps still coming out, because my light activations are so strong that people usually have strong responses to them, and I feel that's still a main part of my mission. But sometimes life comes in between, and you just have to follow the right divine alignment. So this video talks about how things are now going to be very much black and white, and it talks about the natural organic intelligence and the artificial intelligence. And when I was tuning into that for those few moments, I got this synthesized bigger vision, which I want to share with you now, because we all talk about this now. Okay, organic ascension. I talked to you about organic ascension, which is through Gaia, through Gaia's core, through nature. It's not somewhere moving up, because people have this false imaging through the old spiritual ascension that many masters have shown. But this is different because it's happening on a planetary level. And I want to read you something from this book that I want to show you. Yeah, we can do that now because there's so much. I don't know what to start with. But I want to show you this book. Caroline, I think it's Caroline Corey. I don't know, but it's confusing because this author is also called Corey, so maybe that's why I'm confusing it. But it's Patricia Corey. She's one of my favorite authors, actually, and her Syrian Revelations trilogy back in 2010 and 11, when I had my awakening moments, really assisted me in my spiritual journey at that time. It truly activated my own remembrance and knowledge. So this is now, I was so excited when I heard the new book is out. It's the Syrian Revelations, the new ones, and it's called The Galactic Prophecies for the Ascending Human Collective. And I think it also has a chapter on artificial intelligence. It has a super long but super cool introduction from the author herself, opposed to just the channeling, and I really loved it because it's not one of those new agey, it's all love and light material. It's deeply grounded because it is that highest perspective, but it's shared through, okay, we have to apply this to everything that's out of context now, that's distorted, that's manipulated, that's shown in the false light. And in a way, it's beautifully addressed. And I had tears because it's so beautifully written. I actually contacted the author because she's really also an amazing person as well. So I want to read you something here and why this time is so important. And then we're going to go discussing the life force intelligence versus the artificial intelligence, because recently I got a question, how do we know, right, that we're playing in this artificial, not organic way? And I said, well, this is not something I can just reply in a comment, so I'm going to try to put this in the video, because again, this is what I'm showing is the yearly energy, because with all the simplification and as chemtrails and things like that, HARP, genetic, but also biosphere modulation, everything that is being in a way controlled, is not just that it just exists for many years already. People saying, well, that's nothing new, but it's getting more up in our faces, and it's getting amplified because it wants to resolve itself. And I'll share with you when I go into this topic why. Because my main messages are always about the higher perspective of things as they're playing out in creation, rather than just talking about information. So, sorry, I get a bit tongue-tied. I'm still getting used to getting out of my bed rest zone. So I want to read you this so you can see how it's written. It's from a beautiful place. I want to make another video. I'm going to read more. But I don't want to read the whole book because that's not fair to the author. So I really highly recommend you to get this book. It's really beautiful, and it's very important for these times. It's also deeply encouraging to all those who sometimes fall so deeply in this gray zone that they feel they don't want to be here, but they're important star seeds. They're here to help and assist the planet, but we need to first assist ourselves, because how will you assist if your body is completely entangled in this, what is actually a false reality, that in a way you no longer see our way out? So remember, the only way out is through in. So we have to enter everything that's happening now with complete observation, with complete neutral assessment and compassion, and bringing love to all these systems that are still playing within duality. So here it goes. The chapter is called, I don't know, but you're going to read it yourself. All great civilizations, and we speak of those that have flourished on planets beyond the Earth, as well as those contained within Gaia's own experience, share three common existential pursuits. These are, without exception, the exploration of the immortal soul, a quest to understand the God code that is laced throughout all life, everywhere in creation, and third, a conscious respect for all interaction with all nature that defines the environment to include animals, insects, plants, the mineral kingdom, and the air itself, which is in many cases nowadays in the ascending communities, it is so kind of like overseen, you know, it's not looked into. We're all talking about the human ascension. Well, if you are not talking about or witnessing or feeling, experiencing ascension as the ascension of all life forms, moving into the next stage, because it's actually happening through the court of our sun, then you're not getting the whole picture. And you can't be at the forefront this human centric perspective. It doesn't serve us. So whereas those civilizations born of humankind's heightened awareness may have devotedly contemplated a multiverse, aided even by influences from beyond, they did not live it. They could not know, as you are coming to know, what it means, what it meant to be shifting out of the physical universe and ascending to another density, not as a personal experience or pursuit of one's own spiritual journey, which is what I've just shared. This is not just your ascension, but rather as a planetary body, refining itself to be attuned and resonant with another dimensional field in a constantly shifting, mutating multiverse of varying degrees of light and consciousness. Remember how truly blessed you are to be alive to experience something that no human being ever to walk the earth has experienced before. No one, no illumined priest or mighty Atlantis, nor Egyptian pharaoh, no great philosopher, no scientific genius, and not even any corporeal extraterrestrial visitor from anywhere that could be defined as being from across time and space could ever have experienced what you're just beginning to experience now. Yes, of course, it's new. You are slipping into a realm where all the rules of the physical universe no longer will apply, and where time, your measure of existence, no longer exists. So in a way, the message has always been to drop all forms of perceiving time and to just melt into that it's okay that we sometimes feel like time is missing, or we have these experiences when time feels very amplified, or we feel kind of confused. This is natural. When we start embracing things that are new as natural, they will move into the acceptance of our DNA or our genome, our life code, that it's the new norm, okay? But we have to allow it to happen. So I want to move now into this, perhaps at the end, maybe I'll read some more, I don't know, gonna see. But I want to now move into this topic of life force intelligence versus the artificial intelligence. All those of you who are working with your own self, your increased light, but not just move into the more love and light, you know, kind of like expression, but you also know that you're here to serve. When you're observing your environment, our planet, the structures, communications that are now unfolding, you're witnessing just how much is being played out. Sometimes if you plug into the mainstream of information, you feel, well, that's too much to handle. And of course, it's natural to get overwhelmed. But what is important here is the first thing is to understand that yes, we are experiencing this pinnacle of the splitting reality, but it really depends whether you're in the pathway of really consciously choosing organic ascension, physical ascension, or you still are, in a way, a part of feeling entrapped by this fear of separation, because the splitting of worlds is actually only an interpretation. And I've shared with you before that from a higher perspective, as I'm shown from my own light family, my group, is that it's actually a unification that's happening. So when the sun is in a way in its own ascension, it's reaching, you know, its natural cycle. And we perceive, well, something is going away, I'm being separate from that. You don't know because you don't see, and we never see beyond what is shown to us in a way through the inner resonance of what we're capable of perceiving. If you can get my sentence, what I meant was, it's also here in the book, you know, it says that even the dark ones sometimes go into these norms of pursuing technologies, the inner spiritual technologies, perhaps, you know, this viewing, you know, what's it called? I don't know now. I'm kind of flat-headed right now. But it's all these pursuits. They can also see you know, into this four density, so they can pick up information, but they can't see beyond that because they haven't developed their soul, because they're so in this separation mode that they can't see beyond that. So they might bring forth again information, and it happens also with channelers who haven't worked on physically ascending themselves in the body. So bringing this light technology, which is worked through life force, that's what you are. You are the highest gift of technology right now is us. And they know that. So they're trying to do everything to prevent our light technology from within to become so deeply embodied that there will be spiritual advancements that, of course, will progress into physical materializations on our planet that are more advanced, because that's how it happens. It's always in equal proportion to consciousness expansion. So we have to be more developed, more discerning, more wise from within. We have to tune into compassionate love light consciousness from within, so we can see what's beyond just this, what's the fourth or the core that leads us through this karmic resolution and unfolding, unveiling, right? I remember when I shared with you, I got the spirit message that the seven veils are now, they're dropped. So what I'm seeing is it's all dropped now. There's it's almost like no more secrets. Everything that's been hidden, that's been just exposed to the few who are aware, you know, or oh, remote viewing, that's what I meant. By the way, you see, it happens spontaneously. um it's available now to everyone who wants to see. It's just that some people have been so squeezed in this box, you know, rendered to functioning on only as a half alive, you know, trying to create these half living zombies. That was always, you know, the intent, so that we could not develop our light technology from within, which is mastering your work with life force, becoming as life itself, constantly regenerating, rebirthing, renewing, being an intelligent form in a biological form. So that's the only thing that really has the power to heal Earth. Because when we know that the biosphere is, you know, as important as it is, so we can actually have physical existence on this planet, we have to develop this as our own biosphere, which means our own biological intelligence through spiritual technology within, which is mastering life force. And why is this so important? Because that has a greater power, you know, to contribute to the ascending of this planet, which means you're not just a bystander, you're not just sharing information about it, but you're actually applying yourself through this work of mastery. So what I want to share first is that the main thing, what I was shown when I tuned into that, you know, the discerning two templates, which is the old grid and the new grid, we call it the crystalline grid, is the main difference, or the main, I'm going to say it like this, it's the main overview of why this is even happening on our planet, is because you have to understand how consciousness, when it's brought into form, works. So I was shown almost like, you know, when there's a river, there's a dead end of the river. We call it like a dead, it's like a dead stream, right? It just eventually, it doesn't exist anymore and gets dry, right? So the river kind of redirects it then. And this is what Spirit showed me as an analogy. So why are we experiencing as a collective so much of this artificial technology and intelligence, which for me is not even intelligent, that's a funny way of saying it in such a paradox, is because there's been, to some extent, such immense separation within these individuals who've, you know, pursued this control and the dark agendas, that in a way that is no longer self-sustaining. Because artificial intelligence is a complete control of that which you call intelligence, because you can no longer produce life force. So these beings who've gone so astray, they can't produce, they can't harness life force through their bodies. And that's why in all these movies, you know, good versus evil, they're always seeking the ultimate eternal life. I don't know, something like an elixir or, you know, a formula, whatever it is. It's because they have not mastered to constantly generate this immortality within, which is only the immortality of our spirit once it becomes completely self-aware through mastering of life force. So I was shown that there's this strong, what we're viewing now, why is it such an increase of this artificial everything? Everything is now robotic, technologic. We have a solution for everything. It's like, wow, through technology. And there's many excuses that say, well, it will make our lives easier, which in many cases not so. Because when you know all this weather controls and all that, it's not just controlling the weather, they want it. Implanting within us, well, this is also how you want it, because we are, the ones in charge, and you're just a part of this overall group as little ones who constantly say yes, nodding our heads. Is because it brings a lot of toxicity with it. It brings these heavy metals. There's all these elements. It all goes into the streams in our earth, in our soil, and the waters, and it's destructive. So I wanted to bring through this chart, and I want first to explain that these two are the old grid, which is built on separation, and separation needs constant control to keep it together, because it's not self-birthing, and it's always functioning through fear. And that's the main fear. The fear is things will fall apart if we don't constantly control it, because it's like an experiment that you change one variable, right? But you constantly have to control it because there's other elements in play as well that are codependent on that. So eventually it just gets bigger and bigger. The more elements you add to it, the experiment gets out of your hands. If you don't, have it in the safe environment, it's, you have to, in a way, become a total control freak. That's what I'm being shown. So this coexistence that we're now experiencing of this organic pathway, organic ascension, and the artificial technology and artificial intelligence, the IA, is because these grid systems, these templates are coexisting. So you can find out more in that Omnium Universe video. I'm not going to go into that. But what I do want to bring is for those people who are asking themselves, well, how do I know the difference? It's very simple. Just go through these things. I'm going to explain to you in great detail. That remember, first, this is about the coexistence of this, and it interchanges. Even those of you who are in the pathway of organic ascension, you still use technology, but there's a balancing point in spirit showing you, or your life force through your body showing you what's the greatest good you can experience through it. Because the things in the universal structure, the ebb and flow of life, that's really multiversal, that knows its own course, that knows the perfection of it all, knows it oversees everything as a part of the group. So when you say, well, why isn't this one completely dissolving already? Well, imagine even that happening, right away. There would be many people who depend on technology. They lose their jobs, their work. We couldn't interact with each other. We couldn't spread our messages this way. It's not about that, but it's about using technology for organic purposes and using it to co-create with life rather than to control life. So that's the main difference, is the usage system. So how it's applied. And that's why when the multiversal shifts, when the greater galactic shifts occur, they always consider all involved. That's the greatest compassion of this divine goddess, divine mother, is to oversee all life and see it as equal. So that's why these darker components are not just being excluded out of the whole equation, is because they're also part of the whole, and they also kind of are given the proper timeline, or it's almost like they're given this evaluation timing that's now happening through this movement of four density, is to reevaluate, and to see whether they can interact in a different way or not. But from the greater perspective, there is also protection. There is also greater overseeing that will not allow that if it goes too much against the planet and planetary life force itself. So there's this constant balancing now that's at play, and a lot of you who are here as volunteer souls, you're seeding, you're anchoring the more organic template, which is based on the crystalline grid. While the old template is basically focused on this false grid, which is basically false technology. It's artificial intelligence. So the main things to say here is that life force, intelligence, is based on unification and connection with source. So there's this unity and connection to source, and it's organic, while the artificial intelligence is about splitting. It's a splitting perception, so it feels like the world is splitting, and that's the fear. Well, we can't ascend, so they're trying to keep Earth in its lowest vibration, so it wouldn't, rejoin, the greater celestial heavens in that way. So it's based on separation. Because of that, life force intelligence is constantly self-sustaining. That's the gift of life. That's the, if you've read any yogic material, Kriya Yoga, this infinite life force is this divine principle that always brings forth and creates life. Because artificial intelligence just wants to mimic life, but not through divinity itself and divine natural law and divine principles. It's based on finite resources, and it produces a matrix grid. Matrix grid. So this is the so-called crystalline grid that is fueled by light, while the matrix is not really fueled by light. Um, so these finite resources, right, they have to be constantly fueled artificially. That's why I said, and I gave you this example, there's constant need to control your project, or this experiment, because things get out of hand. You change one thing, it's like it starts to influence the other sphere. So when they say, well, we're going to do chemtrails to alter the weather patterns, but there's also other reasons, which a lot of us know, and, having to do with the sun and so on. It influences other things. So eventually, it's like a lie. You lie once, you lie 2 times and 3 times, and then the lie it's always chasing its own tail. So you're trying to say to someone, you're trying to recap your lie, and your story starts to change, and you don't no longer, know what you're going to say because it gets so twisted. So this is very similar. Things get out of hand because things are not separate projects. Okay, this is weather alteration, this is food modification, this is human brainwave control. Mind control is one of the worst possible crimes, and crime against our biosphere as well. This ecological fest or ecocide, like genocide. It's like ecocide, which is in a way a genocide because it's all part of the human on Earth genome. So what this means is that it constantly, it's like elements and factors. There's more and more factors that need to be controlled. So once you start controlling one thing, something on the other loop will come out. That's why you will feel now that it feels that there's more control on our planet, because it's like something gets in the way, and we have to now control that as well. If something comes out on the other hand, well, we have to control that as well. So it's kind of like a domino effect, until you really come into awareness that we can do things like that. Nature has its own laws. We can't control nature because nature is based on divine life force and creation principles. So because of that, life force intelligence is constructive because it's based on unity consciousness, and artificial is based on destructive. That's what there's all these destructive projects now playing out. Because it's constructive because it promotes unity and therefore family. If you've noticed, there's a strong agenda in the artificial zone here of trying to destabilize the family, which is where we're going to have, and I'm not talking about this as in a way having any judgments over anything, because this is not about your personal choices. This is about the controlling systems putting things at our display as this is okay. But in the long run, and I've witnessed that in many Pleiadian sharing resources as well, that it actually is built to destabilize and ruin actually the family construct. Because the family is the main unit, how you experience unity and group consciousness within your personal realm. And then it spreads out. And you can feel that your contribution is for the greater whole. So when you destabilize the family unit, with things like, now using homosexuality as an excuse to do that, and changing genders, and people getting more confused about that. And in the long run, it just, as I've heard in the Pleiadian resources saying, well, that gets to alter your reproductive reality and how you exist and procreate as human beings. So there's a lot happening here, and I've shared a very important Facebook theme live video about this, because I've shared this experience with the movie industry and how they're trying to influence this family construct through a lot of separation, a lot of things that are just really, really going out of hand, terrible things. So we have to really watch out for that. Sometimes people who are playing out in their own families, they're not even aware. So they're not sometimes seeing the things and how it starts so early. I was shown in my dream time actually how early now, in such early age, manipulation and distraction in this world actually begins. So I'm thinking, well, poor children, and babies and infants, because in the past, when, in more nostalgic times, it was not so difficult. But nowadays, your distraction begins when you're just a little baby. Because now little children, if you can see it, they have immense number of toys and gadgets. And I see examples like this. We were out and about, and we were sitting on the sun, and there's two women. One was with the little baby in the wheelchair. Wheelchair, that's not the right word. Well, she had a little baby, and he started to cry, he or she, I don't know. And she was like, oh, there, puts music on the telephone and puts it near the baby so that he could shut up, basically. And I was shown that even as little children, we're being taught so early, when our brain is not even fully developed, that you have to get distracted in life. There's only distraction that will help you navigate through life. So early, and these mothers are not aware. They're not conscious parents, because they themselves are probably so manipulated, they don't know what they're doing. They're just distracting the poor little child instead of tuning into the child, what it wants, why it's crying, what's the message that it has. Because a lot of what I see is young mothers smoking when they're having their baby next to them, and baby starts to cry. I wonder why. And they're like, shut up, here's the music, here's a little tune, shut up, as I'm having a conversation with my friend. It's terrible. So all this is this manipulation to create a deconstruction of the human unit, the human family. Also with a lot of, this kids have toys. They're not developing their own creative abilities even at a very young age. They're constantly bombarded with more things. Oh, what do you do? Oh, just have a new child toy, right? So that's one example, okay? Let's now move into this fact that life force intelligence is life-giving. You are able to birth life itself through you, because you're functioning through creation principles. While here, all constructs actually eventually become artificial, and that requires constant control for maintenance. So that's why there's this much more control, because eventually you have projects. It's like a little mini laboratory, right? So you have to have things in a safe environment. So that's what we're trying to do, create a safe environment for us. But it's actually really dangerous. It's polluted, it's toxic, and it's based on separation. So it's on us to truly know, what is that, what is this. But when you are in your body, the body will have a natural inbuilt discernment factor that will tell you what's what. So at large, this life force intelligence, which is our natural organic ascended way of being, is based on trust, where you know that source has its own manifestation. Divine creation knows its plan. There's a divine plan to everything. It's based on infinite life force. This is built on the solid factor that you don't know what's going to happen. We have the answers for you. We have these cameras for your safety. We have everything built on, there's all these things now they're developing, microchipping, fingerprinting. Everything now is based on all your data. And I've really heard the author of this book, Patricia Corey, in her interview saying, people wanting your information for these gene pool banks, like, give us your genetic information and we will tell you what's your family and ancestry. Don't do that, because they're actually collecting the data for purposes of creating this artificial intelligence that, in a way, it's supposed to look so organic that we wouldn't even notice it. But it's actually just a recreation of life through complete non-acknowledgement of divine creation principles. So it's trying to create life basically artificially. So yeah, that's really important. I'm going to give you some of the examples now. Again, this will be a long thing, but these examples are, for me, what Spirit has shown me to give as little practical life examples, because we talk about here, theory, but how will this play out in our lives? So how do we know the difference between organic and artificial? The answer is not that simple, okay? But I want to now talk about our own connections. We participate in artificial intelligence every day because we're a part of this world. We experience this grid and that grid. That is why I made these interlocking points, because this is interdisciplinary. It's like interacting with each other. That's the point, because the crystalline grid is meant to inform life, because it is the divine design for life. So our own internet connections, there's a lot of people who resonate with people they find online. And recently there was an astrologer that said, okay, I get that. I met a lot of people who I resonated with, but now I'm thinking, well, I also need physical people in my life. And, what should I value more? And getting confused. And again, see, there's this balancing point that only our full embodiment will show us. Because if we only engage in internet communication, even if we say, well, these are our brothers and sisters who resonate with our wisdom, with our way of being and living, and the way we are, it's not the only reason why we're here. And in many cases, we start to create relationships that are just based on this communication, perhaps chatting, emailing. Sometimes we don't have other options when we communicate with people who are, away from us at these large distances. But it's very important to not forget, and I always expose this because people don't acknowledge many times, these chats. I don't like chats at all. I never did. When people send me these messages via social pages, I don't do that because I don't engage in that. So if you want to send me a serious email, you have to do it via my webpage and my working email. But it's such a fine line, chat, if you use it for some sort of, sending someone something funny or playful or goofy, it's just like a simple thing. But I've had many experiences where people want to really talk serious things, share things via chat, and so much gets lost in translation. And people have gotten so used to this way and this method, even with people who are in their living personal realities physically. And so much is getting lost in translation that we forget about our roots and how to really share our feelings, how to commune without the mind interfering. Because I've had my own examples, and I still do, because I'm, sharing this publicly via internet. Just as I'm attracting people who resonate with this wisdom and they want to be part of it, they want to grow and evolve as an ascending being, there's also people who take this as, I'm out there, so I'm out there just for anyone to share anything they want with me, to have, to kind of like have conversation with me, to chat me up, or to build a template about me that's not really me. And I've had people writing to me in a way that I felt, well, that's not connecting with me as an essence. That's just a mind that's tricking them to believe I'm this and that, but that's not me. And I'm just a mirror for them, who perhaps there's a lot of people who maybe don't have people in their physical lives, and they kind of project that energy and that wish, that desire, to something that's, kind of feels comfortable and safe. And that's somehow the internet gives us this idea. You can share anything, but there's still a screen there. There's a wall, so you're safe. There's no factor of vulnerability there. But this, in a way, again, needs that balancing point. So internet relationships versus real life. These are things we have to contemplate on. This is the year that so much of this will come at the forefront. How do we find this temperance, this balancing point? Also, how much labeling occurs through mediums. I've recently, that was in December, I've watched a lot of Marilyn Monroe movies because I just came across, I really wanted to watch them because I've seen one movie of hers in the summer and I said, I need to watch more. So when I had some downtime, I watched almost all of her movies, and I felt into her essence as a being, because that's what I do. I can feel. And I felt how much that which they wanted to present to us about her was not that what she was inside. So that's why she had so many issues. She was so misunderstood, and they portrayed her, they kind of showed her as this sex icon and this symbol. But when you tune into her essence, she was like this beautiful, playful, childlike, innocent, like this beautiful being. And you don't know that by watching the movies and, getting manipulated through the icon that the TV presents to you. So this also part of the artificial intelligence, because anytime there's a medium, there's already a false construct. And if we don't learn how to tune in within things, with things, feel with things through the essence, then we won't know. We won't know because we won't experience things at the essence level. And there's many videos I made about the essence level. So the artificial intelligence guarantees us this easier living, things that are, easier for us, this chipping methods, put all your information so you can just pay with one fingertip and things like that. But does it really? Because it brings so much of manipulation with it, and that's not really the the experience of us having an easier lives. It's living through such a complex web. There's this artificial grid that eventually you forget who you are. Everything's automatic. You know, there's people who want to call someone when they're in trouble. They don't even know another person's phone number because they have like thousands of people in their phone book and it's all automatic. But once they lose something, it's like, who do I call? I don't know. You know, they have to find a stranger's phone and call someone. It's like, I don't even know my mother's number, or, you know, their family members. It's terrible. So when appliances fail, that's the question from Spirit. Do we know how to survive in real life? Even there was one great article from someone who writes organic food and lifestyle magazine articles here. It's a great woman who shares a lot. And she once wrote this article that we wouldn't know how to survive. We don't know how to create fire. We don't know how to, you know, anything. If the whole electric system fails, you know, what would we do? And that's really something to think about. How can you balance your life and your necessity for technology with living through natural intelligence? You know, I spend most of my time outside in nature. When it gets warm, I'm out practically, you know, I want to sleep outside too. I just don't have this ability yet. But it is so important because in this book as well, in the Syrian New Revelations, it mentions this fact. We forgot to stargaze. We think of everything through this artificial light. We're living in these artificially lit boxes, and we're looking at artificial TVs and computer screens. And, you know, people sometimes don't get that personally, you know, in the life. In my own example, I can't always reply. Sometimes I need time away from technology because I only use technology to exist in this world, to do my work, to spread my messages, to communicate with people. But then I'm out. When I'm out, and I can't. It's too much. So when you have this healthy balance of how you use it, how you apply it, it will become a part of this integration modality. Also, distractions, how distracted we are in life, being imprinted by the collective thoughts, so we forget to notice things, we forget to pay attention. You don't get spirit messages anymore, and they're right there in your face, but you are so fixated with what you need to do, think, feel, you know, how to react, and paying attention. So observing, contemplating, this will be so important. Um, Always I see this image of Buddha under the great tree of life. Now, the majority of people do not pay attention. They're so busy and so hyper-driven. But are you? You have the capacity to. Even people who go to jobs still. No one can tell you to live artificially. It is possible. It's a possibility, but you're still the one who's choosing. You cannot devote your whole life to being a part of this artificial imprint. No one can force it upon us. And that's what Spirit showed me very clearly. Although it is present, no one can enforce you. Even with vaccinations and microchips and whatever, when you're paying attention, when you see the energy behind it, so I always tell you, read the energy behind everything that is shown to you. You have to know the difference, because when you only focus on love and light, which is also something I love that is presented in this book, you get misguided many times because you think everything is just gonna be okay and wishy-washy. You have to know that you are the source of light, but you also exist in a world that's going through this turbulence and everything, because the light and dark has on the planetary level have not merged at the level of this consciousness fusion. So the artificial weather control for the demands of what they want, you know, they're trying to say, okay, the Olympics need perfect weather, we're going to do it. But that's not the only reason this weather control is used. Creates immense pollution, toxicity on the planet, chemtrails. There was recently a topic about cleansing them on my New Year's video, and someone said, well, you have these organs and orgonite towers. But that's not the only thing, because chemtrails, as much as any other thing, has an energetic structure as well. So those of us who work more through the crystalline grid, we work more in the aspect of light. We translate the energies through life force translation, or I don't know how to even call it, but we help to raise the energy, or we purify things at the essence level. We also have to do with that which is not just physically charged or released. We have to focus on the release that is the energetic imprint. And I will talk more about that in my writing about volunteer souls and that I'm working on. So I've talked about family already. This example, how early the programming starts at this young age, the baby age. Toys, distractions, gadgets, appliances. The baby cannot develop natural brainwaves capacity to the maximum. It as well connected with the creativity center. So there's early programming of these distractions, appliances, phones, gadgets, to quiet, to quiet and to create a being who will always be distracted, so never fully aware of the self and reality around them. There's also something very important. There is a mass theme of separation of union between partners, because I always see this. People who work sometimes not just one job and they have partnerships or family, they're always so busy with their work. And each of the partners goes and has a separate work. But this was, again, this was a strong agenda against the main theme or reason for union, because divine masculine and feminine forces were always meant to co-create. Doesn't mean they're going to do the same thing. Don't mistake me for that. But they need to be in this constant interactive mode so that they can produce something on this planet that is of high value, of high resource value. So the feminine and masculine cannot co-create together when they're constantly being separated through these separate jobs and always being busy in separate careers. Everyone's now so obsessed about their careers. It's crazy. So this list is endless. I've only given you a few examples, and each and every one of us will notice something in our own lives. Maybe some of you have an addiction to, I don't know, maybe shopping, maybe buying things you don't need. If you like to be, constantly create the energy of abundance, you can still invest in things, but maybe make sure they're organic. Things like not organic, but like natural, like crystals, or even when you buy gifts for others, try to not reach for the plastic and plastic things right away. I always tell people, you have the right to choose. You are the one who is living your sovereign. By every choice you do that. You don't just meditate and then you go about and you do crazy things and you make choices that are not always serving the highest good. So we have to be in this constant alertness mode. So yeah, I've read to you already from the Syrian Revelations book. So are we paying attention? That's important. And I also want to mention something here that gets us into this mode of constantly hoping for something to change and makes us stagnant is the savior mentality. And it was shown that a lot of our patterns that kind of are evolving around this constant topic of when will there be someone in our skies? Well, there's already in our skies, this which promotes stagnation and not evolving because you're not doing anything, it's passively waiting, is in a way remembrance of the old constructs and old timelines when there was this savior mentality, when beings came and they physically came to the planet, and sometimes they created karmic responses as well. But this is not meant to happen at this time. So instead of this massive disclosure and what people perceive it needs to happen, and it's not going to happen, because nothing will happen until the karma of the collective is met and integrated and we're ready to move on to the next step, of re-assimilation. So it's an ancient memory of the alien agendas and many interferences as well, but it's not meant to happen that way now. The disclosure is already happening. It is on an inner project level. It's not external, but there's factors that are external proof that are happening as a part of that inner disclosure through our own DNA, our own remembrance that we're actually those ancestors, and that we can no longer get outside fixed, because it means before you are facing your own doings and the collective karma, you can't move out and say, well, these beings have, this role, they need to do that. It's not how things work, truly. When it's time for the ultimate maturation, it's almost like when you are doing your driver's license. When you're driving, you have lots of advice from your mentor and showing you, but at the final exam, they're just quiet. They're just sitting there next to you, and you're like the one doing everything. And like, you still telepathically, connect to them, and you feel, when you've done something slippery and weird. But it's the navigation system that's very organic and inbuilt within you, and it's within us that can get us through anything. So this fourth dimension, which is this no time zone that gets us through this cord, is about karmic reckoning and clearing. So there's recently been this example of life on Mars, and there's already immense explorations there, but now let's talk about living on Mars and this Mars agenda. And I'm thinking, well, that's great. You ruin one planet, right? Then you just jump on to the next one, because that's how that which is separate from life, which is, consciousness that is not conscious of itself and its role within the divinity of life, sees a planet only as a spinning ball full of resources for them to use until they abuse it to the degree they need to jump on the next one and the next wagon. That's not really what planetary deity is about. So let's see if we can read something more from the book, and then would strongly advise you, those of you who haven't, to consider perhaps taking the Life Force Mastery course, because it's truly that which is our core for this year. And it will get much more challenging and amplified. So let's see. I just opened spontaneously this page, so maybe that's the page we're meant to read. I'm going to do more on the next video I'll do, perhaps. Let's see what's it about. This is about navigating the fourth dimension. Only fear, being driven into human consciousness with the cruelest, most unacceptable form of weaponry, which is mind control, I mentioned that, can deter you now if you succumb to it. Not to diminish for a moment our abhorrence. That's a new word for me, by the way, and it's like that's being strongly appalled by something. So abhorrence of all weaponry against the biology of Earth's ecosystems and all existing beings, we wish to remind you that the manipulated altering of the mind equates to interfering with the sovereign soul imprint that defines your DNA. So basically, mind control is not separate from DNA control. So that's your nature and your soul essence. Altering the DNA, as is now underway on every level and all its aspects, is a deliberate deterrent to sovereign soul intent. Be comforted, though, in the knowing that at the opposite side of that pole, you're also experiencing the extraordinary karma of great masters, artists, and intellectuals, wisdom keepers, elders, and spiritual guardians of the earth, a lot of us, who anchored light there through those same millennia. Which polar opposite one resonates with, as well as you know, is determined by his or her intent, as well as it is by the karmic collection of so many lifetimes. It truly makes perfect sense to you that these demonstrations of such forces, light and dark, are in some way necessary for the resolution of your own individual and global karmic debt. That is the challenge before you. Understand it for what it is, rather than fearing the apocalypse, the end of days, your total annihilation. Your path has led you to observe the collective footprint of all the history of the earth, as we understand it to be the time Homo sapiens has walked upon it, and as you and the planet prepare for the imminent ascension of the entire solar system. The shadow no longer casts familiar distortions on the ground behind you. Rather, it stands almost unrecognizable in front of you, directly like some cosmic gatekeeper demanding acknowledgement, healing, and resolution. We understand that this is a huge undertaking, especially considering how much history there is to forgive and release. A lot. I'm telling you, a lot. Many people, entire nations, do not want to forget or heal the past. They are determined to cling to an identity, an idea of glory or victimization, of which they refuse to let go, killing and willingly dying in order to perpetuate it. We have returned to remind you that you are up to the challenge, riding the waves of the cosmic seas. You know how to navigate these waters. You have traversed the stars after all. So, yes. So, we are not powerless. We have much wisdom within us, and it's going to be more and more time to apply it and to see how everything we're choosing, there will be an amplification of that choice and the fusion of this, So people are saying, I'm only in this light. Well, you can't be, because for us to have our mission here on earth, we have to be, many times we go into this systems of the collective. Sometimes I even have to go to the city, and I don't like the city, and I get viruses and stuff. But in a way, I'm taking that, which informs my body, and it's occurred now through this current, what I call it, temporary sickness, right? Went through my body. But I felt during the time when I felt the worst, I was actually vibrating the most, which was so exciting. And you should see me. I was lying on bed. I was like, oh, virus, do your thing, you know? Because with this whole propaganda, how it's bad for us and we're going to die, and all this fear, and trying to have all these medications, which are bringing our bodies away from their natural resonance and alignment. We're constantly telling our bodies, you know, I'm going to control it so I don't get sick, I don't get this and that. But what needs to move through our bodies, sometimes even to have an upgrade, and a lot of our upgrades here in matter have to deal with getting into the mud of everything, getting into the murky waters, right? To come back alive, more life force, because you're bringing it in those situations, into those energies. You're planting the seed of life into that. So many times we're being triggered by that. We're taking it in, and then again, we're informing the new through the crystalline grid and taking it back. So that's this infinite loop. And if I'm guided, I'm going to do a light activation for this synthesis. It's so important. But I want to share that in many cases, if you are a volunteer soul specifically, you don't always have to go somewhere to bring the energy of that compassion observation. And I've recently noticed this because I don't know why, but for some reason, and I really enjoyed it, by the way, it was a journey. And I don't always do things by the content I present to you and the work I do like that. A lot of the work I've shared with you before goes behind the scenes. And I don't know it's work because for me it's fun. But I was guided to watch the whole series show. It's 11 seasons of MASH, which was, you know, kind of like a few months. I didn't watch everything at once. But as I watched those episodes, which, as you know, is about Korean War, is I felt such deep feelings of war. I've never experienced war because I wasn't embodied at that time. We had a very short war here in our country because we kind of went away from, as you know, Yugoslavia, and there was a short war here. It was very close in Bosnia and these regions, as you know, in Kosovo. But we actually didn't experience it in such a degree. But we all experience war because we're just a part of this planet. We're already part of it. But it doesn't have to be, because again, there's no time, right? Imagine that there's no time. So when you bring your light to this planet, sometimes you will be called into perhaps particular content where something within you through that compassion understanding needs to fuel the energy lines of that, because it's still within the matrix. It's still an energetic grid held there. Okay, so you say, well, that war is past. Yeah, you know, I've shared with you about the chemtrails. Well, you get the physical, you know, illumination, but there's energetic presence still there. So I watched the show until the end, and one day I get the message, so now you've did this little revisitation of that war. I'm like, what? I didn't get it. And I said, well, you were helping, you were assisting with that compassionate state, because that show was so beautiful. There was such emotional, you know, upsurge there, share through the whole TV show, because it was so beautifully made. It was, I cried during this whole show a lot. I felt the feelings that these people had to feel and experience, and when I did, I was shown it helped to create that neutralization point for these things. And this is what I always do when I don't even know I'm doing, and that's what volunteer souls do. We consciously, through divine love, we bring this infusion of light to all these structures that are based on separation, whatever it is. Just trust yourself in your journey when you're taken through these similar situations or different situations, but within the similar nature of the purpose. So 2018, life force intelligence, you have to know at large, love, divine plan of perfection is always overriding everything. So when you go into fear, just observe yourself, because the fear factor tells you that this darkness has more power than that, which truly is not the ultimate truth. So in those moments, do anything to get back into the body, because you will feel the wisdom of the body overriding that. Because like it's shared in this book, and we're going to read that next, perhaps in the next video, because this segment got really long. But it's about how we don't sometimes recognize that through our own upheaval, when we start to identify with it, we bring that back, we cycle it back into the collective. So we don't actually help. We're going to move into that next. So if you want to somehow be a part of this, I recommend you to, in this year, if you haven't already, the Tantrika Life Force Mastery course. It's within my self-mastery courses. There's also other things and contents and audiobooks that will help you to kind of master yourself. That's my focus, and it will always be my main message. Remember, it's for the group. And we're going to share more next time. I hope you enjoy this. I hope you're going to empower yourself to the maximum and know that however things may appear to be, the appearance is never the final. You know, it's not, we don't see the bigger picture, and that's why sometimes we act so humanly in our responses or in our grievances. We say, oh, it's so bad here, I don't want to be here, you know. But I love this because I always had the same message for all of you, that we are here now for a reason. You might say, oh, but I'm not from here, it's so much better there. That's not understanding that source love fuels through everything, and life force goes towards the highest potential. So you don't stay with where that potential has already been realized. You go towards the new and you help to assist that come into its highest potential. That's how life force intelligence works. So thank you for watching. If you want to contribute, you can always visit my donation or Patreon page. And I love you so very much. Stay conscious and embodied during this 2018. More videos to come. And thank you for being a part of this beautiful light team. I also want to thank everyone who has donated recently. It's been a feeling of overwhelm. I felt I was really gifted. Not just it wasn't monetarily so much, but I was gifted with a lot of beautiful responses and gifts of word from people. And I really, you know, felt this feeling that when we fuel, when we exchange the energy, I'm being more fueled, and I can bring more light. So we kind of help each other to light up. And I really want to thank everyone who's contributed with these words, expressions, if donations, whatever. But it was really beautiful for me. I've really felt this gateway of expanding into 2018 and being a materialization of the inner you, the inner core self. So remember, the life force intelligence is the authentic you, it's the core you, instead of here, which is so falsified, and it's kind of like based on um, this. Haven't I think I've written here somewhere, haven't I? It's based on a lot of ideologies on identifying things and putting labels on them, while the authentic self does not need that. It's just self-sustained already within its energy field. So the main thing is life force intelligence, love and compassion versus the definitions, labels, and that fear component, which tells you that the darkness is stronger than the overall, which is the light. Darkness, it's not really perceived properly on our planet, because we say light and shadow, that's the same as good versus evil. No, 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 no. The light and shadow is the natural, is the part of the natural law, you know. We have night and day, we have our, you know, inner polarity that needs to integrate, but that's not the same as the evil versus good. That has been somehow perpetrated in this world for us to see it as equal, but it's not the same. Because for someone to say, well, you have to embrace your shadow, doesn't mean now you have to embrace the evil. Well, you witness, you acknowledge evil, you know, you see its manifestations. But when we do inner polarities, we have to realize that at the very core, there is no evil, you know, at the core of the essence of soul. So the soul, when it goes through this, you know, the creation experience, it will know both light and shadow. But that's not the same as good versus bad, good versus evil. So you need to understand the main difference, okay? So anyway, guys, I'm wishing you the best and brightest 2018. Let us illuminate through anything and everything as one. And if you want to be part of the family, I hope I'm going to do more Facebook Live videos soon. And I'll see you soon. So much love, wisdom, and power. Take care. Bye.